Okay, so we are recording, and welcome to the webinar, What to Do When the Boss is Abrasive. I'm Jen Sellers, and I am from Inspired Mastery, and I welcome everybody. I also have on the line with me Kate Harper and Sherry Boone of Inspired Mastery.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks, Sherry.
Hello for everyone. It's Kate, but I was on mute, so I'm going to go back on mute, too.
Okay.
Keep it quiet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Our company is about coaching that gets to the heart of the matter. Our services are executive coaching, executive turnaround, which is what we're talking about today, team coaching, leadership retreats. We have one coming up in October in Oracle, Arizona. That's a picture there. And complimentary webinars. This is one, What to Do When the Boss is Abrasive. We also have a webinar on practical mindfulness for leaders using our pause tool, which if you don't know about, we'd love to have you check our website and learn about it. It's a card deck and book for leaders to experience mindfulness. I'll say just a little bit about myself. I'm a Master Certified Coach through the International Coach Federation. I'm accredited in Boss Whispering through the Boss Whispering Institute. And when I tell people I coach abrasive executives, there's often a nervous laugh, and then people will say something like, wow, that must be really hard, which is not true. I love it. I love my clients, and I love the impact that's possible with this kind of turnaround. I've been coaching since 2002. I'm co-author with Kate and Sherry of as our tool, our pause tool, 52 Ways to Shift Any Outcome in Less Than a Minute. And I'm also a contributing author to the Handbook of Knowledge-Based Coaching. In earlier careers, I was in education for 13 years, and I worked under contract to NASA for 10 years in the education outreach for high-performance computing and communications division. So I'll talk just briefly where we're headed here about the problem is abrasive conduct in leaders. And it's another way of talking about workplace bullying. Which is a current buzzword and a serious problem. Some people say it's the new sexual harassment. I prefer not to use the word bully as much as possible and to talk about the abrasive conduct instead. To say that the behavior is abrasive does not condone it, and it keeps people from being labeled. So what keeps people stuck is generally fear and anxiety. The leader who is perceived as abrasive or as a bully, the employees and coworkers on the receiving end of the behaviors, and the organization that doesn't know what to do. So there is the problem. Where we'll head with this is talking about each, the leaders, the coworker, and the organization. In terms of the leader, what abrasive behavior looks like, where the behavior comes from, and what to do about it. In terms of the coworkers, the impact on them, how they react to the behavior, and what to do for them. In terms of the organization, the impact on the organization, its potential responses, what to do, and we'll ask the question, what's the opportunity in this challenge? So I'd like to take a moment and find out what brought you here, what you're taking away, or what you would like to take away. And I'll remind you that we're recording for those who have registered. So if you would, please just introduce yourself with your first name and let us know what you're looking for here.
Hi, this is Kelly. I'll go ahead and say, I think just the concept of boss whispering really spoke to me, and understanding that I see a lot of, let's say, unfriendly managers in my environment. So learning how to tame it is what brought me here, I guess.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Who else?
Hello, this is Tessa. I'm working with MassTOS Cooperative, and I've been a consultant for a number of years. And so, as you well know, you have a number of bosses. And you know that, or I know that you often run into abrasive people, so I saw this as an invaluable tool for not only bosses, but anyone that you interact with who is coming from that position.
Mhm. Great. Thank you. Who else?
Hi, this is Carolyn,
Yes.
and I signed up because, one, I have had an opportunity to experience working with a boss who's abrasive, and I currently work in an organization where the CEO is known to be very abrasive in a retaliatory manner. And I decided it was time for me to know more about how to manage those situations when you find yourself working with people with that type of a personality. And the concept of whispering really is of interest to me. So that's why I signed up.
Okay. Thank you. Who else would like to share briefly why you're here?
This is Deb,
Yes.
and I have done a lot of consulting and coaching over the years and run into, as a previous person mentioned, a lot of different kinds of folks along the way. And a number of them are abrasive, whether I'm just working with them or going to be coaching them. And I have a certain style in general, that I notice about myself. So I'm curious, as I continue to learn about this profile of a person, how I might need to adjust my style in certain ways to address this kind of person, whether it's in a consulting way, coaching, or whatever. So I'm particularly interested in that today.
Great. Thanks, Deb.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, let's head on in then. We'll start with what the leader's behaviors are. There are 5 listed here, and there could be any kind of combination of these 5, and there may be others. This is not an exhaustive list. It does capture most of them. So overreaction would be being very impatient and then lashing out in anger, being very quick to judge and particularly judge harshly, taking things very personally. In terms of over-controlling, that could be seen also as rigidity or inflexibility, person saying things like, just do it. No disagreement, no other perspectives are accepted. They might be very tense. They might be very abrupt. Threatening behavior would be perhaps hostile humor, like jokes about paychecks being lost, or somebody saying heads are going to roll, or making those kinds of threats. Humiliation could be also being very condescending or demeaning, meaning to yell or belittle or criticize someone, maybe in a group email, talking down to people, rolling your eyes or snorting in contempt, using aggressive language like idiot or shut up or profanity. And the manipulating behaviors, people experience them as dishonest or insincere. They might not maintain confidentiality. They might take credit or take other people's ideas as their own. People are often afraid that he or she will do something to harm their careers, will quietly get even. The person might withhold information and often shows favoritism. There might be an in-crowd or superiors to whom they're very nice, and others to whom the abrasive behavior shows up. So why is this leader still here? Probably you all actually know. It's because they're extremely valuable in terms of their intellectual intelligence, their rainmaker capacity, their technical ability, their business acumen, or, as we've heard, it may be that they are the CEO. Some of the common assumptions about abrasive behavior in leaders and leaders who are abrasive in this way is that they're fully aware of the nature and impact of their behaviors, that they know what they're doing and how they're being perceived, and they just don't care. Another common assumption is that they're intentionally malicious, that they mean to be mean, and they dominate through aggression and intimidation. And a common assumption is that their behavior is intractable. They can't change. The situation's hopeless. Some people even believe that it's because they're inherently evil. However, research done in the Boss Whispering Institute on these leaders themselves found quite a few differences. First of all, they're unaware rather than aware. There's little or no awareness of the nature and impact of their abrasive behaviors. They're also very afraid. Their intention is neither malice nor evil. It is to do what it takes to get the job done. And what's actually happening is they're defending against the threat of being perceived to be incompetent. There's a strong sense that competence is survival and they cannot be perceived as incompetent. And this is exacerbated if someone around them doesn't do something exactly right. And some fear is also born or exacerbated by linear black and white thinking that is also common in this type of leader. Again, they're unskillful. It's not that they are intentional, but they are unskillful. Their means is to dominate. They do try to gain control through aggression or intimidation sometimes, because while their intellectual intelligence is very high, their emotional intelligence is not. However, they can change. Their behavior is coachable, and the situation isn't hopeless. A little bit more about the EQ side of things. In terms of social sonar, it's lacking, so they're blind to the effects of their actions on others. They don't read emotions well, or they might discount the importance of emotions, saying things like, why are they all worked up about this? I don't get it. Or just because I don't treat them with kid gloves, how could they think I'm out to get them? Or I don't see why they're so angry. When I get on their case, it's nothing personal. They also lack self-management because they're not particularly self-aware, or maybe fall a little bit short in the self-awareness area. And as a result of that, self-acceptance also a little bit lower. They're very hard on others because they're also very, very hard on themselves. And as a result, handling stress is a difficulty for them. They're not good at it. The bright spot is, again, these can be learned. A little bit more about where the behavior comes from. When in the wild, when prey sees a predator, it gets concerned, feels anxiety, and goes into fight, flight, or freeze mode, some kind of defense. So we call this threat, anxiety, defense, the TAD dynamic. And this is common for all of us, humans as well as mice. It's because we have that primitive part of our brain, the amygdala, the reptilian brain, that alerts us when there's something that might be frightening. And this can happen absolutely in the workplace as well. What happens with abrasive leaders is they perceive a threat to their competence. Again, and this may be because somebody in their group or a peer is seen by them as incompetent, and they feel that's a threat to their own competence. They feel some anxiety, and then they defend that competence, their own competence, with some form of aggression, generally. There is another option, because TAD is not the end of the story. We also have a neocortex, that part that helps us move to more skillful strategies. And there are next steps after threat, anxiety. Instead of defense, we can move to working it through. It does require a pause, which is partly why Sherry Kate and I developed the pause tool to help us all stop in a moment of anxiety and think, choose a new action, choose a new reaction. Although I will say pause is not just for moments of anxiety, but it works particularly well in those cases. I'd like to take another pause and get a couple of shares about behavior you've seen and the impact of it. Is some of this that I'm talking about here lining up with your experience? What is your experience? And again, you can just introduce yourself with your first name.
Hi, this is Tessa. I have seen this when programs or being the author of a new program or a new department being threatened or questioned by others, where I'm seeing this behavior that can very much come across as irrational, or the reaction come across as quite offensive.
Mm-hmm.
And in a particularly, I thought, embarrassing situation was when this came up in public meetings.
Mm-hmm. Were you the one who was being questioned?
Actually, yes, me and others, and I felt very sorry for that person. Luckily, in this situation, because they came across so poorly in their attack.
Yeah.
And because I welcome questions, but I will run into that where I felt like he must have felt that he was being put in a corner somehow and needed to react that way.
Okay, great example. Thank you. Yeah. Was there more, Tessa? I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's I didn't know if I needed to be more specific, but you get the idea. I
think so. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Who else?
This is Kelly. I had a manager that would fall underneath this abrasive category, and I think one of the things that you said was very interesting about the threatening the competence, because I think that just rang so true with this person that I worked with. And any time that there was any little thing that the folks on our team did, she would pounce on it and just super controlling. And I think it was a way to just kind of control and make sure that her competence wasn't being threatened. And the IQ was super high, but her EQ, I just said, was like this. I would joke and say was the size of a flea. It was just so non-existent. So I've seen this in my workplace. So it's great to have this content.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm aware that not everybody might be able to talk out loud. If you have a quick share and would like to type it in, that's great. And if you're willing to let me read it out, I'm happy to do that. And is there someone else who can talk who would like to share?
Okay, this is Carolyn.
Okay, go ahead, Carolyn.
Okay, one of the examples that I will use relates to a executive holding a meeting and asking for a report. And each person made their report, but it was counter to what she wanted to have done. A decision had been made to do some marketing and present the marketing to the community. She felt that the plan was not a good one, that it hadn't come through the process. And she went off in the meeting, basically insulting everyone in the room and also insulting the director, who was over the plan in front of everyone. I felt that the person should have been talked to separately. But the language that she used and the manner that she spoke in the room was inflammatory. And so having just listened to what you said about the TAD, I realized that she felt threatened because we questioned her authority. And I had never thought about that before.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another great example. Thank you.
Hey, Jen, this is Kate. I want to actually share a situation that was my own abrasive behavior. As I was a young manager and I was running a team of consultants, and I came from the engineering world where it was, let's get a bunch of tasks on the board and check them off, and also efficiency is prime. And I am very oriented that way, and I honestly was insecure and wanted to be seen as very competent in running this group. But I had a bunch of OD consultants working for me who were much more people. And I used to go to meetings, immediately start talking about tasks. When the meeting was over, I would be done and walk out. When I would come in the morning, I would have basically my clipboard, and I'd be going over to people going, okay, where are you on this? Where are you on this? And I thank God, one of the guys said to me, gave me some feedback of, could you at least come in and say hello and ask me how I'm doing? And he said, could you ask me about my dog? He made it kind of into a joke, but what I love about this model is, so some of that was I was worried about being competent, and I was trying in my best way to be competent, and some of it was my style a little bit, but my desire to be competent helped me be able to listen to, oh, there's another way to be more effective. And that's what I love about this model, because I think that's an in with the person is the thing that's actually causing some of the behavior that's not effective. Is the thing that can help them find a new behavior, which is their desire to be competent. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great point. Okay, so let's roll along in that direction. Again, I had mentioned that TAD is not the end of the story, and here's more about what's possible. This model, DISCO model, is from Alan Seale and his book, Create a World That Works. If anyone would like to check it out, there's a lot of great information and many wonderful processes in it. He uses the model of DISCO being for drama, situation, choice, opportunity, and the little I is for information, which you can gain at all of those levels. At the drama level, the question, it's all about blame. And the question is, whose fault is this? Who can I blame? It's sort of the sky is falling. Can you believe this is happening? That kind of attitude. And that's one level at which we can address any situation. So the entire TAD dynamic basically falls here. There's threat, anxiety, and defense, and that's where that drama is all right there. At the situation level, we're looking for a fix, period. Kind of like what Kate was talking about, just come in, get it done. The question there is generally, how can we fix this and how quickly? And there's often an ancillary question, so that and how can we make sure that nobody else finds out that there's been a problem? Because that at the situation level, it's often trying to fix a problem. At the choice level, we begin to ask, who do I choose to be? Whom do I choose to be? What do I choose as my relationship to this situation? Or what do I choose as my role? And the opportunity looks for the larger question. What's the potential? What is the opportunity in this situation? Generally, it's really most powerful to start right there at opportunity and choose your role based on that opportunity. Who does this opportunity call me to be? what does this opportunity call me to do? And that can be used in this situation as well. So if we look at effective leaders, they'll see a problem, they'll explore the causes, maybe situational causes. Maybe the employee is unable to do something, unwilling to do something, for example. And they'll generally also explore greater opportunity. Then they take action more based in choice and opportunity. They choose their relationship to the situation itself to be one of partnering with opportunity rather than only solving a problem. And from opportunity, they choose their role. Then they end up doing things like developing people, contributing to people being more engaged as they look at larger opportunities. They might provide resources and training. They might coach people. They might help people think through things. They set limits and consequences. On the other hand, leaders who behave abrasively see a problem, diagnose incompetence. They immediately think, there's a problem with, say, my direct report. That person is unintelligent, they're lazy, they're inept. They might even call them inexperienced, although they have a lot of experience. And then they attack that incompetence. Again, the attacking is at the levels of basically drama and situation in the DISCO model. So they dominate or threaten through intimidation, or they might use passive-aggressive means. We're going to take a look at the impact on coworkers and the organization. You're probably aware of a number of these. When there is abrasive behavior in an organization, there's a lot of attrition. A Gallup survey showed that it's the main reason people quit. And a Center for Creative Leadership survey had 74% of successful executives saying they had at least one intolerable boss. Absenteeism gets high. There's a higher incidence of stress-related illnesses, higher incidence of substance abuse. There's a decrease in morale and motivation, which of course leads to a decrease in productivity. And there can be increased legal actions based on either hostile environment or discrimination. Currently, there are no incivility legal things in place, although there are a number of states working on it. And in extreme cases, there's retaliation such as sabotage or physical violence. Coworkers reacting might take the threat, anxiety, defense mode themselves. They might react rather than respond and just go straight into fight, flight, or freeze. If they fight, they might be fighting back using almost the same behavior or equally unskilled behaviors as the person who was abrasive to begin with. They might flee by leaving the organization or by hiding out, either physically or emotionally, gossip with other coworkers. They might freeze, and that's really, really common. Just the jaw drops and there is no response. People are stunned. They don't know how to answer, how to respond. And the freeing and fleeing is sometimes because they're afraid. It's also sometimes because they've tried reporting it and they don't see any action. They see nothing happening. Coworkers also might respond using more of a DISCO type model. They would respond rather than react. Their response would then be based in choice and opportunity. They might set boundaries with the leader around abrasive behavior. They might talk with other coworkers to find solutions, not just to gossip. They might report this abuse to either management or HR. And they might still choose to leave, dancing out to their own greater potential rather than fleeing. In any case, it's a loss to the company. I want to make it clear that I'm talking about how they might react, not how they should respond. Whether they react out of the TAD dynamic or out of the DISCO model only speaks to what they are doing, not what they should be doing, because it is not the responsibility of the coworkers to address the problem of abrasive conduct in the workplace. Pop media has a lot of advice about articles and books for people on how to survive an abrasive boss, but in the view of myself and others in the Boss Whispering Institute, that is not what is appropriate. Relying on the coworkers is unfair. It's not their job. It's the responsibility of the organization to maintain a physically safe workplace and a psychologically safe workplace. So, of course, the organization is made up of people, and we all have that threat, anxiety, defense thing going on. So it's quite possible that people in the organization would respond through the TAD dynamic. There are specific blocks to action that I'll just give some examples of, because it helps maybe for you to see a little bit of this in your own organizations, people saying things that rationalize the situation like, well, nobody's perfect, including me, or using projection, well, he's just got some difficult employees, or sometimes procrastination, it won't be long before she retires, and very often minimizing, well, he doesn't blow up that often, or you telling people you're making too much of this. And there are a lot of unexamined beliefs. First of all, the belief that I alluded to earlier, that nothing has worked in the past, that it's hopeless. And this can be because the leader has denied the abrasive behaviors if they were approached, or it could be because the leader was given management training that wasn't effective. And there's also the belief that people just can't change, that it's not possible for people to change. And finally, and you probably know others, but finally for what I'll mention now, the belief that the only thing to do is to get rid of them, that we can't get rid of them because they're too useful in other ways, and that's our only option, so we're stuck. The organization might also react using the DISCO model. So starting by gathering information at the drama and situation level and be prepared to run into the TAD dynamic. Then looking at what is the highest potential. What's the larger message that might be hiding in this situation? What, at a systemic level, can we address that, because there's always something in the system that is supporting the person's abrasive behavior. And then choosing the role based on the opportunity. Who is this opportunity calling me to be? What is this opportunity calling me to do? And then taking action based on that role and the highest potential, the larger message and the role I'm choosing. I'd like to see if anybody is able to jump in with a little bit of applying this model. If you think of a leader that you've known whose behavior is abrasive, what is the opportunity right now, or if this is something from the past, what might have been in the past that opportunity? Did anyone notice when you were when you've been in this situation that you did choose a way of being that was helpful? Has anyone had that kind of an experience of choosing who you decided to be?
Hi, this is Deb, and
Yeah.
I'm I'm not sure about this last one, but I was just reflecting on a situation I was in a number of years ago, where it was a training program I was helping to create, and there were a number of us, and the person who was in charge, the sponsor, and he was very involved with all of us as a team, and he was quite abrasive, and I picked up on it immediately as a person just receiving, his abrasive behavior. And after a certain amount of time, let's just say a couple of months, I knew this was going to be a long-term project. It was really affecting how I was able to contribute to the project. And so the strategy I used, you mentioned earlier, that the abrasive manager sometimes has the in people who they're not necessarily the same way, which I have seen that with other folks. And so now reflecting on this, I I see that that was the case with this person, and I was a new person for him. And frankly, I kind of started realizing, wow, I got to prove myself to him before he's going to behave differently. And frankly, that takes a while for him. So eventually it did happen, and everything shifted. But what I did at the time so that I could continue interacting with him was I connected with the person who was like the in person, one of the in people who was on the project, and worked with her or spoke with her to try and have influence on him in terms of how he would show up for not only me, but there were other people also having issues, and see if she could sort of do some side coaching and influencing in that way. And that did help because he was unaware. He was unaware, and frankly, I don't know how much he cared, but underneath he really was a nice guy, especially as I came to know him better. But that was how he was initially with people. So that was maybe an example of the strategy I used to just cope in the meantime until I proved myself with this person.
Yeah, and it sounds like, Deb, you not only coped, but you did get him the feedback, or had the person who was more likely to be able to influence him to give him some feedback there.
Yes, exactly. And she was willing, fortunately, and she did the best she could, and it made a difference at the time.
Yeah. Data, I think, is really important. And if it can be presented as data, then it's easier heard. This is true for all of us. Thank you, Deb. That's great.
Hey,
yeah,
Jen, in your own experience, with of course keeping confidentiality, what are some of the opportunities you've seen working with some of the leaders you've worked with?
Yeah, I'll give one example. Thanks, Kate. One person, what came out in the coaching was that she was just extremely stressed and overworked, and she was putting most of that pressure on herself. And I was thinking about her because when you talked, Kate, about how you were as an abrasive, slightly abrasive person yourself, she was one who she got the feedback. She slams her laptop closed and is out of the room before any of the rest of us are getting up from our chairs after a meeting. Well, for her, that was because she felt so busy and under so much pressure. But other people saw it as one of her abrasive habits. And when she began to realize that they saw her as somebody who was trying to be superhuman and quit trying to be superhuman and started giving herself a little bit of a break, it really opened her up to other people. And so many people began to open up to her. And she ended up having relationships at work, the likes of which she had never had. So there was a real hidden opportunity just to connect with people, and also to shift the culture of her immediate part of the company to one where they actually cared about work-life balance and were paying a lot more attention to that. So there's one example, and thanks for asking, Kate. I think we probably will move on now, and I want to talk about what to do. I'll start with the organization, I'll move to coworkers, and I'll save the leader for last. I want to say that what I'm talking about here is with the understanding that this is the best possible scenario. This is what is ideal, and I know that it's not always easy to do. One thing is to evaluate on both performance and conduct so that people are held accountable for their conduct as well as their performance. Another is to develop and uphold some kind of policy for civility. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has a good example of a policy, and I can point you to it if you'd like. It's called Maintaining a Violence-Free Workplace Anti-Bullying Statement. And there are quite a few others out on the web. The nitty-gritty is to start exploring and documenting the patterns that you do hear about. You are almost always going to have to somewhere in there enlist the leader's management, which again is easier said sometimes than done. And it requires showing the management the impact of holding and not holding leaders accountable for adequate conduct, as well as really excellent performance. You have to give that management reason to care enough to set limits and consequences, much like with the leader himself or herself. And looking for the greater opportunity, which I can help with that and some of these other difficult pieces as well. I'm happy to consult with you to be both a thought partner in your particular situation and also to make recommendations based on my experience. In terms of coworkers, the exploring and documenting patterns is part of what I had mentioned under what to do as an organization. And when you do that, it actually helps the coworkers as well. It has a positive impact on them and has to do with that organizational responsibility I was talking about earlier. So investigate and listen. It just requires exploring reports of abrasive conduct, starting with just taking them seriously. Then gather the facts, the incidents, the frequencies. You validate people's feelings as you go along and just choose to be supportive of the coworker as well as impartial and neutral toward the leader that they're talking about. And then document those findings, which is part of, again, the earlier organizational responsibility. You can also obviously refer them to an employee assistance program if they've been quite traumatized. And it's really important to take some action with the leader so that you're not seen as condoning the abrasive behavior, and in order to gain or regain people's trust and respect. For the leader, there are three things. First is to show them the impact. Second is to give them a reason to care. And the third is to offer help. I'll talk about each in turn. Showing the impact is, we talked about both evaluating on performance and conduct and identifying and documenting in earlier organizational related slide. So then it's present some of those patterns to them. We've had, and you just say something like, we've had a steady stream of complaints from coworkers about their experiences interacting with you. We don't see this with other managers. This is not acceptable. It can't continue. We need to have you turn this around. Of course, it's important to avoid getting pulled into defensive fact battles of what really happened or who's really at fault. That's in drama and situation land. So instead you say something like, the fact is that we don't know and cannot know exactly what happened. We weren't there when the incidents occurred, but we do know one fact. Your coworkers feel they're being treated disrespectfully, and this can't continue. Then set limits and set consequences. The way you interact with others has to change. Failure to do so will result in, and then you need to tell them what it is that, decide what it's going to result in and tell them. So maybe it's taking away some responsibility, reducing responsibilities, maybe it's a role reassignment, maybe it's loss of opportunity for promotion, and it might be termination. Then offer help, internal mentoring where possible, always giving behavioral feedback, the supervisor in particular, to give clear and caring feedback on specific behaviors, kind of like Deb's in-crowd person was able to do, and following up specifically. Now again, some of this is easier said than done because the supervisors themselves of a person like this are often quite anxiety-stricken. And of course, external specialized coaching, which I'll talk about a little bit. By the way, training is not usually appropriate for somebody who doesn't already see the impact. So even anger management or something like that, if they don't see the impact, they're not going to see themselves in the training. That specialized coaching in our case is Inspired Mastery's executive turnaround, which, as we said, is based in this boss whispering method. Through the executive turnaround that we do, the leader finally understands his or her role in causing the distress. We use a highly personalized assessment, and by the way, only the leader gets it. Nobody else sees it. It's very specific behavioral data gathered from coworkers, and for the first time, they understand the impact because they finally see what is causing distress in others. And then she or he gains more insight into the role that they're playing and can choose a different role, which leads to developing new strategies. They practice that in their coaching. They develop new strategies that are still authentic. People say, well, I hope you're not going to turn me into a cupcake. No, they're still true to the person, but they are strategies that this person can use to get the job done without having to resort to unskillful behaviors. And as Kate mentioned before, they gain new competence in the area of interpersonal interaction, and that is something that they care about, is gaining competence. Their EQ is increased because as insight increases, as they understand what's going on and how people are perceiving them, and begin to make changes, their anxiety of being perceived to be incompetent decreases. And the lessening of that anxiety allows them to change. So it's sort of an upward spiral. They understand themselves better so they can manage themselves better, and through that, more empathy grows. They move from drama and situation to choice and opportunity because they're becoming more effective as a leader. In some cases, they get to choose whether to stay or not, because in some cases it is to the point where if they don't turn around, they've got to go. Just a couple of words about why an external coach. The certification in the Boss Whispering method does say that this is something that has worked to a high degree, and having someone who's experienced. I am less threatening to the client because there's no history. I come as a researcher for them, saying, we've got to figure out where these perceptions are coming from and do something about them. And of course, I'm not triggered by them. My goal is their success. They feel that. It lessens their anxiety again, which makes it possible for them to do the work. And in terms of the actual method, I'm happy to spend more time with people individually on how that looks. There are some benefits to the coworkers as a byproduct of the leader behavioral assessment in the executive turnaround. Because I'm going to come ask people about their perceptions, they have a voice. They get a chance to convey their frustrations and fears. They have a chance to hear themselves talk and find solutions and actually notice their part in the interactions, although, again, this is not the point. It's just a byproduct of self-aware coworkers. And they get to see progress both in the leader and in the organization. They get to see a chance to notice the changes the leader has made, and they see the organization taking action. And of course, for the organization, it's the decrease in attrition. People aren't fleeing. Decrease in absenteeism, risk of legal action, and decrease in the risk of being seen as condoning the behavior. And of course, the increase in morale, motivation, engagement. You've got people no longer hiding out, fleeing, and freezing. The organization gets more value from the workforce. And people are working together, either again or finally, so much more productivity. And as I mentioned, coworkers' respect for the organization as they're not seeing the behavior being condoned. So, organization retains both the value of both the coworkers and the leader, and they're no longer losing good people because of one they're trying to keep. If the leader doesn't change, at least he or she has been given opportunity, may yet learn from it. Employees and coworkers, if the person is terminated, their suffering ends due to the problem, and either way, people regard the employer positively for intervening. Usually something will happen from there, even if the leader doesn't change. And I actually haven't experienced that yet. I'm hoping not to. The organization reduces potential for litigation because they can demonstrate they've intervened, and they have peace of mind knowing that they did everything they could in the situation. So we've looked at all three of these areas and what's underneath. Would like to have just a couple of quick shares, if you're willing, about what you're taking from this webinar.
Hi, this is Tessa. Well, I think it's particularly good to see that there is a way to address it, the method, the process. But I think what was most eye-opening was how little the individuals understood their how they were being perceived.
Mm-hmm.
And
Great.
the assumptions that you mentioned.
Yeah. Thanks, Tessa.
Yeah, this is Kelly. I think I'd echo that as well. I think in my own experience, I kind of thought that this person knew exactly what they were doing and they're aware of it. But after going through this, it made me realize that really there's a high likelihood that they had no idea that they were even operating this way. So, and then it was kind of more of a had response,
Mm-hmm.
So
great. Thank you. So what is next? I will be contacting anyone who's registered to schedule a consultation, a 30-minute consultation about your specific situation. If this is something you're dealing with in your organization, I can walk you through a brief set of questions to see if this work is a fit and see what recommendations I might make. If you're a coach or consultant, we can talk about how we might work together. And if you're in none of these categories, we can talk about what brought you to the call and whether there's something that you would like addressed. I'd like to remind you also that we're happy to bring these complimentary webinars, either this one or the PAWS, Practical Mindfulness for Leaders, into your organization. And to be sure and contact us if you're interested in our leadership retreat on October 1st through 5th in Arizona. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and I look forward to connecting with you very soon.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Take care, everyone. You bet. Take care.
Bye-bye.